Hello, this video is to start section 4, which is continuing exponential functions, but focusing on writing equations and doing some application problems or word problems. So, as always, as good note takers, we're going to title what we're covering. So this is section 4, which is exponential functions, writing equations, and applications. And again, applications mean word problems. How do you do these things in a real life situation? All right, so first it's just writing equations. So given some information, do you have enough information where you can put together the formula is what this is really asking. So the first one is find the equation of an exponential going through 0, 3 with a factor of 1.25. Well, think back to what we learned in the previous videos. What information do you need in order to create an exponential equation? The basic form of an exponential is f of x equals ab to the x, where b always represents our factor, and a always represents the y value of the y-intercept. That means that I need to be given the y-intercept and the factor. Well, the factor, they flat out told me, the factor is 1.25. The question is this the y-intercept? The answer to that is yes, this is the y-intercept. And how do I know that? I know that because x is 0. Okay, so I should be able to pick that out. That's why that was one of the first videos that you should have watched. So with this knowledge, the y-intercept of 0, 3 and a factor of 1.25, I should be able to plug directly into the function and find a function of 3 parentheses 1.25 raised to the x. Okay, so this is just a matter of plugging in the values that you know. But I want to go deeper. I always want to review what you should know about the function. So with this information, is this a growth exponential? Is this a growing exponential? Or is this a decaying exponential? This should be exponential growth because the factor is larger than 1. So growth because the factor is larger than 1. And we also learned rate. So can we determine the rate? The rate is going to be a 25% gain. How do we know that? That's because rate can be calculated as factor minus 1 times 100, or, again, if you want to convert to a percent first, factor times 100 minus 100, okay, because you're subtracting that original 100%. So I'll just put an or there, depending on how you want to remember that. This is just the information that you should be able to gather based on what you're being told, okay? So you shouldn't be going into any of these things blind. This gives you an idea of what you should be looking for when you are making your table or when you're making your graph, okay? What should be happening? Okay, next example. Find the equation for an exponential going through 0, 7, with a factor of 0.89. Well, again, do we have that critical information? I know I have my factor. My factors, they flat out told me, is 0.89. Do I know the y-intercept? Yes, I do, because the y-intercept occurs when x equals 0. So I do have 0, 7. And so when I put this into the form f of x equals ab to the x, this is going to be 7 parentheses 0.89 raised to the x. Tell me what you know about this. Think about what you know about this. Is this going to be growth or decay? This should be decay because the factor is stuck between 0 and 1, or it's a decimal, however you want to describe that. And can you calculate the rate? Remember that the rate is the factor as a percent, what you're keeping, minus 100, okay, minus the original 100%. So this is going to be 0.89, I'll show the work, times 100. We want to convert that to a percent, and then take away the original 100%. So this is going to move the decimal over 2 places, and it's going to be 89%. Take away 100%. And you can see that that's going to result in a negative, which makes sense. That's going to give us a rate of negative 11%, or you can say an 11% loss, which again makes sense because we said it was supposed to be decay. All these things are supposed to mesh together. Next example. Find the equation of an exponential going through 0, 15, increasing at a rate of 7.08%. This one is different from past problems because now we're being told the rate, and we're going to have to convert that back to a factor. So first things first, can I identify the y-intercepts? My x value is 0, my input is 0, and so I know that 0, 15 is my y-intercept. The problem is that I don't physically have my factor right now. What I do have is a rate of 7.08%. Key in on what it's doing. Is it a gain or a loss? This is increasing at a rate of 7.08%. So this is a 7.08% gain. That means that I'm adding it on to an original 100%. And that means that I'm keeping 107.08% is what I keep. I don't work with percents though when I talk about factor. I have to convert this back to a decimal. And remember, that's going backwards. So I want to make this smaller. So my factor is 1.0708. Remember, as from a previous video, percents are always out of 100. They're going to be larger. Decimals are out of 1. So they're always going to be smaller, okay? It depends on which way you're going to move the decimal. What formula are we using to do that? Again, I'm kind of staying away from formulas when I do the problems because I want you to get that intuition, but you can do this as a formula. I can find the factor by converting rate as a decimal plus 1. Okay, so I can convert this to a decimal first, which would have been 0.0708, and then add it to 1. Or, okay, again, this is the same thing, depends on how you want to view it. I take the rate plus 100%, and then I divide by 100, because again, I have to get back to a decimal. I don't care which way you remember this, okay, as long as you have this intuition. I care more about the intuition than I do about you writing any formulas out. Okay, so now I have my y-intercepts. I know my factor. I put this all together to find the equation. I have f of x equals 15 times 1.0708 raised to the x. And that would be the answer to that problem. Next example. Find an equation for an exponential going through 0, 13, decreasing at a rate of 2.6%. Zero in on what the relationship is. This is decreasing. This is decay. So if the rate is 2.6% loss, that's another way of saying negative 2.6%. What is this a negative from? What is this being taken away from? It's being taken away from an original 100%. So it's 100%, take away the 2.6%, and that's 97.4%. But factors are not written as percents. They have to go in the formula. So I have to convert this back to a decimal, and I get 0.974 as the factor. If you find it easier to go from factor to rate, there is nothing stopping you from taking this decimal and then converting back to what the rate should have been. This factor is less than 1, which means I know it should be a loss, it should be decay. The difference from 100% or from 1 is 0.026, and that's going to be my 2.6%. So you can go forwards and backwards to check your answer. It's always a nice thing to do anyway, to get an idea of whether you went the right way, if you have the right answer. So I have my y-intercept of 0, 13. I know it's the y-intercept again because my input is 0. I just figured out my factor. So my equation is f of x equals 13 times 0.974 raised to the x. Now let's do some word problems. Let's say I have x and f of x. Okay, this is not completely a word problem yet. It's just looking at it a little bit differently. This is taking us back to a previous video to see if we can tie this all together. So here I have a table of values. I have 0, 160, I have 1 and 136, 2 and 115.6, and 3 and 98.26. And the first question is this exponential? And not only that, but how do you know? So is it exponential, but then also how do you know? Well, what does it mean to be exponential? To be exponential, I am looking for a constant multiplier. That's what my factor is. So I need to see if there's a constant multiplier. I can't tell the pattern just by looking at these numbers. I have to go through and use the formula, okay, or the division of the consecutive outputs, as long as my x is increasing by 1s. In this course, spoiler alert, they're always going to increase by 1s. So you shouldn't have an issue here if it's exponential. I want to take f of 1 divided by f of 0. You're always going to go upward for your division. So this is going to be 136 divided by 160. And that's going to give me 0.85. And then I want f of 2 divided by f of 1. That's 115.6 divided by 136. Guess what? 0.85. And then I want f of 3 divided by f of 2. 98.26 divided by 115.6. All using the calculator, I get 0.85. I'm sorry it got darker. My phone battery is dying. So I'm going to finish this problem and then I'll just make another video after this. I do have a constant multiplier. So is this exponential? Yes, it's exponential. How do I know? There is a constant multiplier for each consecutive output. Okay. Not only does that help us answer that question, but when they ask us what is the factor, I've already done that. The factor is 0.85. Can I pick out the y-intercept? I should be able to. It always occurs when x equals 0. My x-intercept is 0, 160. Can I put together the equation for this function? F of x equals 160 times 0.85 to the x. All right. I'll save the next one for the next video.